Hello world. So, capacitors. There are thousands in your computer, there are thousands in your phone, and yet I think they're kind of poorly understood and a little misrepresented. So, let's turn that frown into a smile and just briefly discuss, have a 5-minute crash course into what capacitors are physically, how they can be used as storage of energy, electrical energy, and in filtering applications as well. So a capacitor is basically two conducting plates separated by a non-conductor, such as air, for example. And any capacitor you'll ever encounter will probably have those two plates rolled up into itty-bitty little space that it occupies. And what you can... a really great analogy for a capacitor is, that we'll use extensively through my talk, is a drum of water separated into two equal halves, colored in red and green, they're just the same water, with a non-permeable but flexible membrane. And we can examine the properties of charging a capacitor in an analogous way to basically pumping in water in one side and it being expelled due to the increased tension in the membrane from the other side. So that's charging the capacitor. And we can take that to the extreme. The capacitor has finite capacity for electrical energy, so we can completely depress the membrane so far that it stores the maximum amount of energy and expels all the water from the second chamber. And by stopping both sides, we've basically got a charged capacitor, a charged drum of water, and it can do work for us. So let's examine that in a circuit. We've got a battery connected to a lamp, to a capacitor and a switch, and if we depress the switch, we'll notice that the capacitor charges up, and we'll see that because the light bulb will glow for a time and then dim as the capacitor is absorbing as much energy as it can and then getting full, and so there won't be current flowing anymore. And that again is analogous to having the drum, and we're basically pushing water in one side and it's being expelled at the other end, and until a point where maximum capacity has been reached. So let's now make that capacitor do some work for us. Let's take it out, put it in a circuit of its own where it has just a light bulb, and see the effect of the energy, the electrical energy that has been stored in it. So when we put it in, you'll see that current will flow in the opposite direction, but it will flow through the circuit, the light bulb will light up and then dim as the electrical energy is being dissipated. And again, that's like releasing the stoppers in that drum and allowing the membrane to reach the equilibrium point, and the two halves now have equal amounts of energy. So that's the energy concept, like how a capacitor stores and discharges energy. How about filtering properties? And those are useful because signals have lots of frequencies and multiple frequencies, and we want to differentiate one frequency from the next, and a capacitor is able to do that for us. So let's see how. Typical example is your sound re-refraction and waves are through a microphone are converted to electrical signals, sent halfway across the world, and then reconverted to sound through a speaker. But on their way, maybe they're corrupted, and usually they are, with high-frequency components. So let's imagine that your voice signal is in the low-frequency band, and you have high-frequency noise components on your channel. And what you can do is you can apply a capacitor to filter out the high-frequency components from the low-frequency components. And then let's examine, using our drum analogy, what happens to these two signal paths that I've drawn here with a question mark. And so basically what you have in the next slide, we'll have a drum, and we'll have the high-frequency components coming in. And you can imagine that as a short but very quick pushing and pulling of a piston, putting water in and out. And the capacitor, the drum of water, is able to absorb that volume because it has the capacity for it, and it will replicate it on the other side of it. So it's going up and down with the frequency. But if we have a very long wavelength, you're pushing the piston in for a really long time, there's only so much energy that the capacitor can absorb, as you see here, before it's full, but you're still pushing. And so that allows, so basically the capacitor is not able to respond successfully to the lower frequencies, and they just go over the top. And so that's a really important property. And so effectively what we have here is a low-pass filter. It passes low frequencies, they just shoot right over, but the capacitor is able to absorb the high frequencies, and so we've cleaned up our signal. And that's fantastic because you get like cleaner signal, and you also have this everywhere. If you have a telephone and you have an internet connection, a DSL connection, you've got data coming at the low frequency and the high frequency, and if you have a line filter. And capacitors are able to differentiate those two sets of information for you. So that's it. Short course in capacitors. I hope you guys are all like, yeah!
Thank you very much, Natalia Galin.